Well, hello. Welcome back. Yeah, let's just get into it. Lazarus Effect. It's a 2015 film that stars Olivia Wilde and Donald Glover and some people that I don't know who their names are or can't think of them off the top of my head. Spoiler alert as usual. I'm going to talk about the movie. You don't want to hear about it before seeing it, then don't watch this. Alright, so first scene of the movie, it's like black and white security footage or like something of them, a group of people trying to revive this dead pig. They have invented some kind of serum or something, so they inject it into the pig and they do the experiment and the pig comes to life for like 3 seconds and then dies again, but it's a step in the right direction. So fantastic. The next scene, we're introduced to our main characters. So there's Frank and Zoe, who are two doctors at Berkeley Labs at the university there in the research center, and they're like lovers and whatnot. They're supposed to get married, but then they got the grant and they got like too focused on the grant. Well, Frank more so kind of just pushed it to the side, and I guess she just sort of agreed to it or something. I don't know. There's a whole thing with that. Yeah, okay. So anyway, they do that, and then they're sitting there and they're trying to figure something out, and they're like, well, why didn't it work? It didn't, it revived it, which is great, but it didn't keep it alive. It didn't resuscitate it fully, and then it was healthy again. So they're trying to figure it out, and then, there are three others. There's Nico and Clay, who are like their lab assistants, I guess, or maybe they're like students or something like that. And then there's Ava, who they hired to basically film the process and document everything. So Clay comes up with some kind of plan that is all scientific-y stuff about biology that I don't remember. But anyway, they're like, oh shit, he's right. So they try it out. They pull out a deceased puppy, a doge, if you will, and throw him on the table. They put the serum in him. They inject it into his brain. It's supposed to like help reactivate like neural links and whatnot. So they put it in the doge's head and they zap it, and it doesn't work the first time. They do it again, it doesn't work. Eventually they're just like, okay, well, I guess it didn't work. And then all of a sudden the dog like springs to life and it's like twitching on the table and freaking out like it's been dead. So like it's probably super confused or whatever. Anyway, great success. It works. They literally brought something back from the dead that's been deceased for longer than we can currently bring someone back from the dead from. So, cool. They end up taking the dog home, but it's acting weird. It's not eating. It's normal enough, but like, you put food right in front of it, a dog's gonna jump in there and eat that stuff. Anyone who has a pet will know that. But the dog doesn't seem to care at all. Then they show a scene of like Zoe in bed asleep, and then the dog like opens the door and just like stands over top of her and watches her sleep. Kind of really creepy stalkerish shit if it was a person, but it's a dog, so also creepy but not like stalkerish. Anyway, they back at the lab the next day, they're kind of discussing it, and they're saying that the serum is supposed to dissipate after like a few hours, but it's still like, they do a CT scan and the serum is still around the dog's brain, so it's still causing the dog's brain to like do neural links, but like more than usual. Like there's more neural activity in its head, which is very unusual. So they're kind of like, this could potentially cause like aggression. So you probably shouldn't take the dog home. We'll keep it at the lab. So they do that. And then Clay is he's working overnight, I guess. Frank and Zoe went home. I don't know, I can't remember. But anyway, long story short, Clay is like alone with the dog, and then the dog breaks out when Clay's not looking. He looks, and the kennel is like wide open, and he hears stuff smashing in another room. He goes in, like the kitchen is all like torn apart, and I guess the dog wanted food now finally, so yeah, they find the dog, and then it just sort of like deteriorates into the next scene. So that's that. Then okay. So then the dean the next day calls him in, or a couple days later calls him in, or calls Frank in, starts giving him shit because like half of the backers of this experiment, or whatever, it was supposed to be something to do with helping coma patients like redo their neural link. I'm not a scientist, so I'm butchering this explanation entirely, but something to do with coma patients, getting out of their coma faster or whatever. I guess like stimulating their brain to make them snap out of it or something. That was what the experiment was originally for. And the guy's like, yeah, but like it's gone so more than that now. So I mean, that's what happened with penicillin, with it lists all these things, Coca-Cola, like that's not a medicine, but everything was kind of by mistake and it just worked out well. Anyway, the dean's clearly not thrilled. Again, she's like, all the backers are like religious, and you didn't think it would come to this, like bringing something back from the dead is like against religion or whatever. I don't know. Kind of a weak argument for something that could save lives, but there it is. So anyway, long story short, Zoe and the group they're all in the lab or whatever, and I guess before Frank could come down, a bunch of like suits come in and they grab all the stuff, and she's like, what the fuck are you doing? And they say that basically they're like the shareholders representing the company have sent us down to take over all this stuff of like some pharmaceutical company that they like just bought out, this pharmaceutical company that was financing the experiment, some convoluted thing. Anyway, this pharmaceutical company now is taking possession of all of their data from all of their experiments. They're left with essentially nothing. So that's fucking great. So they're all talking about it later after all their stuff's confiscated, and lo and behold, they're like, okay, well, let's duplicate and film the experiment again, because if we have proof that we did it, like, because they confiscated their tapes too, obviously, or not tapes, who tapes nowadays? I guess it was like, well, it's 2015, maybe it was tape still, I don't freaking know. Anyway, they confiscate all of the video that Ava shot, so that's gone too, which is unfortunate. Ava did manage to sneak the dog out, though, while they were cleaning everything else, because I guess they didn't, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, that's neither here or there. So they decide they're going to do it, they're going to redo the experiment and refilm it and everything, so they have something backing, so that if it gets released, they can say, no, we did this before, and then have, like, everything dated and whatnot. So that's smart. But they're like, okay, but they took all of our key cards, and Ava's like, haha, I snuck out with the dog, and I snuck out with the key card. Should have had like a key card of some kind. Anyway, whatever, doesn't matter. So yeah, they have a key card, and then turns out that Zoe and Frank have one bag of serum that they've been keeping in like their apartment as like an emergency thing or whatever. So they're like, okay, we have exactly what we need to redo this experiment. So like, let's friggin' go! So they sneak in. Ava goes in and she walks past the security, flashes the car, and they're like, oh, working late tonight? She's like, yeah. And she goes in and then lets them in through the back. Good times. Yeah, they set up the experiment. They bring out another dog. The first dog doesn't seem thrilled. It's in the kennel. I guess they brought it for some reason. Whatever. It's barking at the other dog's dead body, thinking like, okay, what's going on? Why is there like a dead dog? It's a dog. It doesn't know. That has absolutely nothing to do and no impact on the story with anything, so I don't even know why I mentioned that, but anyway, long story short, they're about to do the experiment, they got it all set up, and Zoe goes to pull the lever to like initiate the electrode whatever experimenty science stuff, the Frankenstein equipment, for more or less, and she gets electrocuted, and there's a power failure, and like and everyone's like, okay, what's going on? They don't realize she's out until like they get like some form of light, and they're like, oh shit. And they try to like defibrillate her and everything, and she's not coming back. And so Frank is like devastated. Clearly, that's his partner, obviously, plus his like scientific partner and his romantic partner and all that shit. Everyone's not thrilled. They couldn't save her. So as Nico, Clay, and Ava are talking about what are they gonna do or whatever, they noticed Frank putting her on the table that the dog was on, meaning he's gonna try to use this Lazarus serum on her. And they're obviously freaking out. They're like, that's a human. Like, it worked on a dog, it's not a human. He's like, it's the same principle. And they're like, yeah, but like, that's a little bit beyond what we're willing to do. And he's like, hey, well then fuck off, I'll do it myself. Anyway, they all eventually comply because they're not gonna let him do that himself, I guess. So they set her up, set Zoe up on the table. They put the thing through her like temple, and they inject the serum in her head, and they do the test, and they do 1 attempt, no good. 2 attempts, no good. And then Nico realizes on the security monitor, oh shit, the guard's coming, because like there's a power failure. He's going to go investigate like what the hell's going on, right? Shit. So they turn off all the lights, they go hide, they cover up Zoe's body, and the security guard comes in, and he doesn't come in, but he walks by and looks through the window, and it's dark in there, and there's nothing going on. So he keeps going. Anyway, crisis averted. Just as they're about to, I guess, come out of hiding, they realize that Zoe's body has like, it's sitting up straight with the sheet like still over her head. And they're like, okay, that's fucked. So Frank is like obviously more thrilled than scared because she's up. Something, obviously, she's back or whatever. So he pulls the sheet down and she's like visibly awake but very disoriented. Yeah, so she's in shock and she's like, did I just die? And he's like, yeah, but you're good. So that's super comforting. They do a CT scan, and the fluid's still in her head, but they're expecting it to dissipate. They're like, yeah, remember what happened with the dog? And they're like, yeah, but this is a human. Like, it's gonna be fine. Which, obviously, as the movie progresses, you find out, no, it's not fine, because clearly, as she's, like, sitting with, like, a blanket, kind of, like, getting out of shock, or whatever, Frank and Nico are talking, Frank and Zoe are talking, and he's kind of explaining, like, we're good. And she can see her on the corner of her eye looking at a pen. And then the pen moves, and she's kind of shocked by the pen moving, and she, like, starts to hear, like, what's inside Frank's head. And she, like, finishes the sentence before he even says it. And so he's freaking out. He's like, okay. Cool. Anyway, at some point they go, and they're talking in the other room, and Zoe can hear their thoughts through the wall. So they're like, she can pick up on them all saying, like, there's something not right, something's not good with her, I don't know what's going on, blah, blah, blah. They're all panicking and shit. And she starts testing her newfound ability, and she's able to move that pen with her mind. So she's got, like, telekinesis. Some Secret World of Alex Mack shit going on. if you remember that show. Oh, that was a good one. Yeah, and then she notices, like, her fingers have, like, black on them. Like, I don't know if they're burnt or whatever, but, like, and her wedding ring was, like, burnt onto her skin, so she's, like, wearing it as a necklace, whatever, but, like, there's burn marks where she, I guess, touched the lever, and she's trying to wash it, and it hurts, and she's like, oh, what the fuck, and then eventually, like, she notices it's healed, and she, like, comes out, and she's, like, very, like, out of it, and stumbling, and Frank sees her, and she's like, I think something's wrong with me, and then she immediately starts throwing up, and all that, like, white serum gets vomited out, and, you know, we all love watching scenes of people vomiting, right? So that's good. Yeah, and then she says something along the lines of, like, she was... Oh, fuck, I forgot to mention, as I always do. So at the very beginning, she's been having, like, ongoing nightmares of a reoccurring dream based on an experience she had as a child where she was in a burning apartment building and, like, her neighbors died in it or whatever. And, yeah, so she has these recurring dreams. Anyway... Fast forward back to where we were, after she just threw up, she's like, I was in that apartment. Like, that's what hell is. I don't know what I did in life, but, like, I still ended up in hell because you're reliving your worst moment in life or something over and over and over again. And she'd been living it for years. And Frank's like, no, you were out for, like, an hour tops. She's like, no, it was years. Like, which explains why her and even the dog were so disoriented. Yeah, so that's a whole thing. What else? Yeah, she's convinced it's hell. And later on in a scene, Ava is with Zoe in the room, and she ends up like being transported into Zoe's nightmare, and she's freaking out. And there's like the same burning hallway, but it gets more intense. There's like weird shadowy creatures that like grab her hand and burn her arms, and finally she snaps out of it and wakes up, and she explains the dream to Frank, Nico, and Clay, and they're like, what the hell? And Frank's like, she must have told you. And he's like, what? And she explains it's a whole dream or whatever, and then like to the T. Like even with like the hands under the door and everything, like everything was like dot on to Zoe's dream. So obviously Ava's freaked out, like, okay, I'm getting pulled into other people's nightmares. We're going on a whole other level of what the fuck. So yeah, they come to like this. They look at the CAT scan and they figure out that like her brain is becoming like super neurodivergent, like the dog's was. It had like all these firing, like instead of like small portions of her brain firing off, her entire brain was lit up. So like that whole rumor of like, oh, we only use 10% of our brain. No, we use 100% of our brain, but like a lot of it is like, you know, it's not all active at the same time is what they explain in the movie. I don't know the truth behind that. I'm not a fucking scientist, right? But that's what they explain it as, and it's like, okay, she's using like 100% of her brain. So she's rapidly evolving. Like most creatures slowly progress to use, their brains grow or they use more of it like over like millions of years, and she's doing it in like hours. So she's like hyper evolved or something. Good times. Right, okay, so then she meets up with what's his name? Donald Glover's character. Oh, I already forgot. Nico. She's like, Nico, you gotta help me. Like, you're the only one I trust. And then she starts like coming on to him. And props to Nico, because Olivia Wilde, whew. But he's like, no, he's the gentleman. So good job, buddy. But not so good, because she ends up not being thrilled about that. The rejection was taken a little to heart, I suppose, because she like force pushes him into like a metal cabinet and locks the door, and he's like, Zoe, what are you doing? Like, get me out of here, blah, blah. And then you see the metal cabinet like compacting on itself, so he gets crushed in there, blood leaks out. Good times. Not like a super detailed gory death, but like the concept of it was, that's fucking horrifying. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was really good. I enjoyed that in a disturbing way. So he dead. You know. That's what you get for being a good guy, right? A nice guy and whatever. No, I'm just kidding. So anyway, that's all done with, and they're like, where's Nico? Where's Nico? And Clay's freaking out. He's like, okay, like, you tell me what the fuck happened to Nico right now, because you were the only one in the room with him when we all left. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about, dude. Like, he said he went to the bathroom. And he, like, gets right up in her face, and he's got, like, something pointing at her, and she, like, telekinesis it into his throat. And so he's choking to death, and they obviously didn't see her do that, because they're all confused. Like, what the hell's going on? Like, oh my god, we gotta get this thing. They got forceps, and they pull it out. It's too late. Like, it was not only lodged in his throat, it, like, went through it or something. I don't know. Anyway, he choked to death. They pull it out, and it's like, I don't know what it was, but it was supposed to be like something important. I guess I should have paid attention. Yeah, so the cat's out of the bag. They realize, oh fuck, she's like, she's something a little bit more than what we thought. So Frank and Ava run out, and like, Frank's got a plan. He's got syringes with like either sedative or like something to like put her down, essentially. Like, we can't let her leave here. We've seen what she's capable of. It defies all logic and science, but I mean, she can't get out and hurt more people, so fuck that. Here's these syringes. You take some, I'll take some. You hide here. I'm gonna go deal with this. Basically, if I don't come back, you have to make sure she doesn't get out. So he leaves her in the room and goes in the hallway and sees her standing facing away, like crying. Like, I guess she's overwhelmed. Like, what is going on to her? Like, as she's evolving, I guess it's not evolving in a long enough time frame for her to like lose who she was and be replaced by what she's becoming or something. I don't know. That's what I get anyway. And then they have this whole thing where she's like, okay, I see you have a syringe, like put it on the fucking ground. He's like, all right, you got me, let's talk. And he's like saying, listen, whatever's wrong, we're gonna figure it out. He says like, I still love you and everything, or I love you and we're gonna get through this. And she's like, really, you still love me? And she's got like tears coming and it's like kind of heartfelt. And he's like, yes, of course. And she's like, okay, well, let me see then. And then she reads his mind, and all that's going through his mind is, okay, when you have a moment, grab that syringe and stick her with it. So she has her hands on either side of his head to like hear his thoughts better, I guess, or something. And she's not impressed. She's like, ha, I figured as much. And she goes, crushes his head. So Frank's dead. Yep. Bye, Frank. She goes and she's fucking around with Ava, just playing with her mind, like at this point. She's calling out her name like, Ava, but in her head, so there's no direction of where the voice is coming from, so Ava's all freaked out. Just little things to like mess with her, like a little red rubber ball bounces out of a door, and she's like, okay, like obviously I know you're in here. And yeah, and she is, and she drags her back to that hell world, essentially. And she sees like the little girl Ava, because it was what happened to her in her past or whatever, and she's like, not Ava, Zoe, and then the evil Zoe is like all black-eyed and like her skin is like burning with like embers and stuff. Very cool effects. I enjoyed that. Always like people like with like fire elements to them or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, so that's happening and she's like approaching, and so Ava's like, okay, well, obviously we have to like try to reason with the little Zoe. She's like, Zoe, you can save these people, you can open the door, blah 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 blah. And Zoe opens the door, and I guess that's exiting hell and entering heaven or something, because like a big blinding white light comes shining through and they're knocked back into the real world. And then you can see that Ava had stuck her in the chest with one of the syringes, and Zoe's like in tears. She's like, I'm so sorry. And she's like, that's fine. And then in the neck with another syringe, and she's out. Then it's fast forwards to like, you see Zoe's body on the ground, and Ava's like against a wall, like cowering kind of, and the paramedics are rushing in, and the paramedic leans down like, are you okay? And she's like, oh god, she like killed them all, and they hug or whatever. And then as they're hugging, she looks and Zoe's body's gone, and then she pulls back and the paramedic's face is replaced by Zoe. So that's fun. I don't know if she was just doing a whole trip in her head or something, but anyway, breaks her neck. That's the end of that. And then the very last scene in the movie, we have back in the lab, evil Zoe has a bunch of tables set up with transfusions from her own blood, of like her serum infused blood, into these 4 fallen individuals. So essentially she's making an army, and that's when the movie ends. Yeah, and it ends with like Frank's eyes opening. So that was the Lazarus effect. And I liked it. I really did like it. Yeah, it was neat. I didn't know much about it going into it, but yeah, it held up pretty well. I got to give it the infamous rating though, so let's see, what are we gonna do? I really did enjoy it. I'm just trying to think of how I will see it in the next couple of days, because things always change. I'm gonna go 7.97. Yeah, I think that's fair. It wasn't quite as good as like Wrong Turn or High Tension, I don't think. Although I'm biased for Wrong Turn, but yeah, so I don't think it's quite an 8, so I'm going to give it a 7.78, and that's going to be my rating. I do recommend it. It's a good watch. I will likely watch it again because it was enjoyable enough. The scenes were good. It flew by. Like, I don't know how long the movie is, but it didn't feel like a long movie. Maybe it is a short movie, though. I don't know. But, yeah, that's my story. And that's the Lazarus effect. So, thank you, as always, for watching. Adios.